Hook, what if I told you that the life you're living right now isn't being created by your actions? It's being created by a hidden story running beneath your awareness. A story so old, so familiar, that you no longer hear it as a story. You call it reality. You call it personality. You call it fate. But what if fate isn't something happening to you? What if it's something you're unconsciously repeating? Think about it. Why do certain patterns keep returning no matter how hard you try to escape them? Why does success feel close but never stay? Why do the same disappointments wear different faces and arrive at different times? And why does it seem like some people effortlessly attract opportunities while others spend years fighting for a single breakthrough? The answer isn't in your circumstances. It's not in your luck. And it's not in your effort. The answer is hidden inside a frequency you've been broadcasting your entire life. A signal created by the oldest story you tell yourself. And tonight, we're going to find that story, because once you see it, you can never unknow it again. And when the story changes, reality follows. Part 1. The invisible story controlling your life. There is a strange moment that happens to almost everyone. A moment so ordinary that most people miss it. You wake up in the morning. The room is quiet. Nothing has happened yet. No bad news. No disappointment. No rejection. No problem. And yet somehow, before the day has even begun, you already know how it's going to feel. A familiar heaviness appears. A familiar expectation settles over you. The same emotional weather you've carried for years quietly returns and takes its place. And without realizing it, you've stepped back into a version of yourself that feels exactly like yesterday. Most people think this is normal, but here's the truth. That feeling is not the day. It's not reality. It's a story. A story your nervous system has memorized so completely that it begins playing before your conscious mind even wakes up. And because it plays every day, you mistake it for who you are. But you are not the story. You are the one listening to it. The problem is that you've been listening for so long that you've forgotten there was ever a difference. Think about a movie you've watched dozens of times. After a while, you know every scene, every line, every twist. Nothing surprises you anymore. Your life works the same way. The unconscious mind loves familiarity. It loves patterns. It loves certainty. And once it decides who you are, it spends every day looking for evidence to prove itself right. Not because it's cruel, because that's its job. Your brain isn't designed to discover truth. It's designed to confirm what it already believes. Which means if somewhere deep inside you believe you're overlooked, your mind will notice every moment you're ignored. If you believe you're unlucky, your attention will collect proof of bad luck. If you believe you're unworthy, you'll unconsciously filter out evidence that says otherwise. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin living inside a self-created reality tunnel. The world becomes less about what's actually happening, and more about what your story allows you to see. This is why two people can walk through the same experience and leave with completely different conclusions. One sees rejection. The other sees redirection. One sees failure. The other sees feedback. One sees an ending. The other sees a beginning. Same event. Different story, different reality. Most people spend their lives trying to change the event. Very few ever think to change the story. And that's why transformation feels impossible. Because changing your circumstances while keeping the same story is like repainting a prison cell. It looks different, but you're still inside it. The story always wins, at least until you become aware of it. And awareness is where freedom begins. Because the moment you can see the story, you stop being controlled by it. You become larger than it, and that changes everything. For the first time, you realize something astonishing. You were never trapped by reality. You were trapped by a description of reality. A description written years ago by a younger version of you. A version that was doing its best to make sense of the world. But that version isn't you anymore. And the story it created doesn't have to be your future. The question is, are you ready to stop repeating it? Part 2. The frequency shift. Becoming the person your future is waiting for. There comes a moment in every transformation that feels invisible. Nothing dramatic happens. No lightning strikes. No sudden miracle appears at your door. The outside world looks exactly the same, and yet something has begun to move beneath the surface. A shift so subtle that most people overlook it completely. And because they overlook it, they stop too soon. They return to old habits, old emotions, old identities, and they never realized they were standing at the edge of a breakthrough. Because real change doesn't begin in your circumstances, it begins in your frequency. Before a tree breaks through the soil, roots are growing in darkness. Before dawn appears on the horizon, the earth has already started turning toward the sun. And before your reality changes, your energy changes first. This is the part nobody talks about. Most people are addicted to evidence. They need proof before they allow themselves to believe. Proof before confidence. Proof before gratitude. Proof before trust, proof before peace. But the people who transform their lives understand something different. They understand that waiting for proof keeps you trapped in the reality you're trying to escape. Because if your emotions depend on your circumstances will always control your emotions. And that means the future will continue looking exactly like the past. Think about it. How many times have you told yourself, "I'll feel confident when I succeed. I'll relax when the money comes. I'll feel worthy when someone chooses me. I'll be happy when everything works out"? It sounds reasonable. Almost everyone lives this way. But hidden inside those sentences is a dangerous assumption. The assumption that the outside world creates your inner state. The assumption that life must change first. The assumption that your power lies somewhere outside of you. And that assumption quietly keeps millions of people stuck, because the truth works in the opposite direction. The inner state comes first. The outer experience follows, not because the universe is granting wishes, because your state changes the way you think, the way you speak, the way you act, the way you interpret events, the opportunities you notice, the risks you're willing to take, the people you're attracted to, and the people who are attracted to you. Everything begins shifting when the state shifts. This is why two people can have the exact same opportunity placed in front of them. One sees possibility, the other sees danger. One moves forward, the other hesitates. One changes their life, the other stays exactly where they are. The opportunity wasn't the difference, the frequency was. Your state is not just a feeling, it's a lens. And every day that lens decides what kind of world you experience. Imagine wearing glasses with dark-tinted lenses for 20 years. Eventually you would forget the lenses exist. You'd assume the world itself had become darker. That's exactly what happens with emotional patterns. You don't realize you're looking through them. You think you're looking at reality, and because of that, you keep recreating the same outcomes. Not intentionally, automatically. Until one day you decide to question the lens, and that question changes everything. Because the moment you stop asking, "Why does this always happen to me?" and start asking, "What state am I bringing into this situation?" you reclaim your power. You stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances, and begin seeing yourself as a participant in creation. Now here's where the real work begins. You cannot create a new reality while emotionally living in the old one. Read that again, because this single truth separates people who change from people who endlessly consume self-help content without ever transforming. You cannot emotionally live in the past and expect to experience a different future. The body doesn't understand future possibilities, it only understands present feelings. And if you keep feeding it yesterday's emotions, it keeps producing yesterday's identity, which keeps creating yesterday's life. That's why the first stage of transformation is not action, it's awareness. You begin noticing the emotions you've been rehearsing for years: the worry, the frustration, the resentment, the self-doubt, the invisible feeling of not enough. Not to judge them, not to fight them, simply to see them, because what you can observe, you can change, and what remains unconscious controls you. The moment awareness enters the room, the old program starts losing power. You begin catching yourself. You notice the familiar story starting to play. You notice the old emotional pattern rising, and instead of becoming it, you watch it. That tiny gap changes everything, because in that gap, choice becomes possible. For the first time, you realize you don't have to obey every feeling. You don't have to follow every thought. You don't have to become every emotion that visits you. You can witness it, and witnessing creates freedom. But freedom alone is not enough. A field cannot remain empty. Nature doesn't work that way. The old frequency must be replaced with a new one. And this is where most people become uncomfortable, because the new frequency often feels unnatural at first. Not because it's wrong, because it's unfamiliar. Remember, your nervous system mistakes familiar for safe, even when the familiar is suffering. So when you begin embodying confidence, the old identity calls it arrogance. When you begin embodying abundance, The old identity calls it unrealistic. When you begin embodying self-worth, the old identity calls it selfish. The old self always defends its territory, not because it hates you, because it believes it's protecting you. But protection can become a prison, and eventually, you have to decide, will you remain loyal to the person you were, or become loyal to the person you're capable of becoming? That question appears in every transformation, and the answer determines everything, because your future isn't waiting for you to become perfect. It's waiting for you to become available. Available to new possibilities. Available to new beliefs. Available to a version of yourself you've never met before. The moment you become available, life starts responding differently. Not overnight. Not magically, but unmistakably. You speak differently. You carry yourself differently. You enter rooms differently. You make decisions differently. And slowly, the world begins reflecting the person you've become. Because reality has always been a mirror, not a judge. Not a punishment, a mirror. And what appears in the reflection changes when the person standing before it changes. This is the frequency shift, not forcing, not chasing, not convincing the universe, simply becoming. Becoming so aligned with the future you desire that your present identity can no longer contain you. And when that happens, the old life starts feeling too small. The old fears lose their authority. The old story loses its grip. And the future you've been searching for stops feeling distant, because for the first time, it's no longer ahead of you. It's beginning to emerge from within you. And that is where everything changes. Part 3. The moment reality starts responding. There is a moment that arrives after enough inner work. A moment so quiet that if you're expecting fireworks, you'll miss it completely. Nothing extraordinary happens. The sky doesn't split open. A voice doesn't descend from the heavens. The world doesn't suddenly announce that your transformation is complete. Instead, something far more powerful occurs. You stop chasing, and in that moment, everything begins moving toward you. Most people spend their lives trying to force reality to cooperate, trying to control outcomes, trying to predict every possibility, trying to protect themselves from disappointment before it even arrives. They grip life tightly, as if holding harder will somehow make things stay. But life has a strange relationship with force. The tighter you grip it, the more it slips through your fingers, because force creates resistance, and resistance creates distance. This is why the people who seem most magnetic are rarely the people trying hardest. Have you noticed that? The person who desperately wants approval rarely receives it. The person who desperately wants love often pushes it away. The person obsessed with success spends years running after it, while someone else moves through life with an effortless confidence that seems almost unfair. The difference isn't talent. The difference isn't luck. The difference is state. One person is broadcasting need. The other is broadcasting certainty. And certainty is magnetic, not arrogance. Not ego, certainty. The quiet knowing that says, I do not need to force what belongs to me. That energy changes everything, because reality responds differently to a person who trusts. Think about a river. A river reaches the ocean not because it struggles harder than everything else. It reaches the ocean because it keeps flowing. It doesn't stop every mile to question itself. It doesn't demand proof that the ocean exists. It doesn't turn around because a rock appears in its path. It simply continues. And eventually, what seemed impossible becomes inevitable. Most people never become magnetic because they never stay with the process long enough. The moment challenges appear, they assume nothing is working. The moment fear returns, they believe they've failed. The moment old emotions surface, they think they've gone backward. But growth doesn't move in a straight line. It moves in spirals. You'll meet old fears again, old doubts again, old stories again. But each time you meet them from a higher level of awareness. And that's how you know you're changing. Not because fear disappeared, because fear no longer controls the direction of your life. That's real power. The absence of fear is not power. The ability to move despite fear is power. The absence of doubt is not power. The ability to act despite doubt is power. The absence of uncertainty is not power. The ability to trust yourself inside uncertainty is power. And the moment you understand this, you stop waiting to feel ready, because ready was never coming. Ready is a myth created by fear. The people who transform their lives aren't the people who feel ready. They're the people who move anyway. And every step they take becomes evidence of a new identity, because identity is not created by thinking. Identity is created by repetition. Every time you choose courage over comfort, you become a little more courageous. Every time you choose trust over fear, you become a little more trusting. Every time you choose possibility over limitation, you become a little more powerful, and eventually, the new version of you becomes stronger than the old one. This is the moment reality starts responding, not because the universe suddenly noticed you, because you finally noticed yourself. For years you searched outside, for validation, for permission, for proof. For someone to tell you that you were enough, that you were worthy, that you were capable, that your dreams were possible, but the truth was always waiting in the same place, inside you. Hidden beneath years of conditioning, beneath the old stories, beneath the fear, beneath the doubt, waiting patiently, like a light covered by layers of dust. The light never disappeared, it was only forgotten, and now, for the first time, you're beginning to remember. Remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Remember who you were before the world told you who to be. Remember what your heart knew before fear taught you caution. Remember the version of yourself that existed before limitations became beliefs. That version is still here, still waiting, still calling you forward. And every time you choose a higher state, you move closer to it. Every time you refuse to feed the old story, you weaken its grip. Every time you embody the future before you see it, you strengthen the field around you, until one day, something remarkable happens. The life you once imagined stops feeling impossible, then it stops feeling unlikely, then it stops feeling distant, and finally, it starts feeling normal. That's the moment you've been moving toward. The moment when abundance feels natural, when confidence feels natural, when peace feels natural, when success feels natural. Not because circumstances changed first, because you changed first, and reality had no choice but to reflect it. Because reality is always listening, not to your words, not to your wishes, not to your complaints. It listens to your state, your frequency, your identity. And it faithfully echoes back whatever you repeatedly become. So if there is one thing to remember from tonight, remember this. You are not here to chase your future, you are here to embody it. You are not here to beg reality for permission. You are here to become the person for whom that reality is inevitable. The old story had its time. It taught its lessons. It played its role. But it is not your destiny. It is not your truth. And it is not your future. Because the future belongs to the version of you that refuses to shrink. The version that refuses to settle. The version that understands something most people spend their entire lives forgetting. That your power was never in what you attract. Your power is in what you become. And when you become enough, when your state aligns with your vision, when your identity matches your desire, the waiting ends, the chasing ends, the struggle ends, and life begins responding to you in ways that once felt impossible. Not because you changed the world, because you changed yourself. And in the end, that was the key all along. You were never trying to attract a new reality. You were becoming the person that reality had been waiting for.